Hello everyone, this is Frank DeMore with the End Times Research Ministry. Today is November the 22nd, 2016. I want to talk to you about gold and silver as it relates to Bible prophecy. And of course, if we're in the last days, which obviously we are, when you know all the signs that Jesus told us to look for concerning the last days and are all here, we're definitely in those birth pangs. And of course, this is the beginning of the sorrows. It's going to get much worse. I wish I can give you better news than that, but that's what Jesus Christ told us in the last days, that the last days events would be played out as a woman with birth pangs. And this is exactly what we're seeing. Now, for those of you who just found my YouTube channel, please go over to my website. You see the front cover of my website right before you in this YouTube video. And when you're at my website, just scroll down and you'll see a link for my book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth, the latest edition, November the 17th. Click the link and the book will be loaded for you immediately. It's my gift to you, the free book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth. It gives all the documentation you'll ever need to understand we are definitely in the last days. And in this book, I will connect the dots. You'll see the prophecies and you'll see the fulfillment of it. So please take advantage of my free gift to you today. Now you see the gold coin and the silver coin before you here. And you see in the book of Revelation chapter 18 verses 11 through 12. And also in the Old Testament it talks about the gold and the silver in Ezekiel chapter 7 verse 19. In Revelation it says, "And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth her merchandise any more." The merchandise, now take a look, of gold and silver. And then he outlines some other items in there. He goes on, "And precious stones, and of pearls, and fine linen, and purple, and silk, and scarlet, and all fine wood, and all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manner of vessels of the most precious wood, and of brass, and iron, and marble." So gold and silver were listed among these items. And in Ezekiel, he talks about the gold and the silver. Now look what he says there. "And they shall cast their silver in the streets, and their gold shall be removed. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of wrath of the Lord." This is during the tribulation period. This is when the Lord comes down and he begins to pour out his wrath on an unbelieving world. And at that point, where the people are trusting in their gold and their silver, and they've put their gold and their silver before the Lord our God, they're going to find out the very hard way that the gold and the silver means nothing to them anymore. And of course, we see the wailing and the weeping as Jesus referenced in Revelation chapter 18. So gold and the silver, without a question, is going to skyrocket through the roof. I said this in my book. I've been warning this year after year. I've been talking about how gold prices, silver prices are going to go through the roof. So as you can see, what I wrote, Revelation 18:12, gives us a look at some of the items that will be taken away by Jesus from the people living in the last days. These items, no doubt, have skyrocketed in price, for we see the people weeping over these items. Most people, as you know, won't cry over items that have no value. Based on what we see from Revelation 18:12, I have been warning as many as I can over the years that the prices of gold and silver will skyrocket. Almost every month we are reading news reports showing gold and silver are indeed becoming major items in these last days on a global scale. Around 10 years ago, I could have purchased an ounce of gold for $300. And what I did for you, I pulled out what the gold prices were. You see here, 11/22. That's today's date. This is what the gold prices are currently in the United States. For an ounce, $1,214.80. Okay, so you'll have that under your belt. I'll go on to say, if I would have told you 10 years ago gold would hit $1,214 mark, most people would have just laughed at me and many people would have called me crazy. However, those people who laughed at this prediction have taken a second look at what they were told. Now, what if I told you in the future you could see the price of gold hit $3,000 to $5,000 mark? We know what could drive the price of gold and silver up in the near future. There is no doubt that when paper currencies fall, the real wealth will take the lead as it has so in the past, i.e. like during the Great Depression. And what I do for you is I cite what's going on. India is a prime example of what I'm talking about. Take a look at this headline below from November 9th of 2016. In that article, the headline read, as you can see, gold price skyrockets in India after currency ban. And I give you a small quote from that report that came out on the 9th. And it says, as I write this in the morning of 9th November 2016, there are huge lines forming outside gold shops in India, and gold traded heavily until late into the night yesterday. Depending on who you ask, the retail price of gold has gone up between 15 and 20% within the last 10 hours. Now, what I did for you, when you go over to my website, you'll see the link right here. You can click this link, you could read the story. I'm going to just make it easy for you. Now today there is more news about the crisis going on in India. As you can see from the red print below, gold has so far shot up to $2,800 per ounce. And then there's a headline to this article, Scenes of Panic in India as Gold Price Skyrockets After Currency Ban. Now, this article that I just gave you the headline for, it came out November the 16th of 2016 from Zero Hedge. So what I did for you is I made a video of the article, a reading of the article, made it as simple as possible for you. I know that there's a lot of people who don't like to read that much and they'd rather watch a video, so I took the time out for those people so that you can just follow along, listen to what the article says, and then I'll come back and close things off.
Here is a link to part 1 about what happened in the first 2 days after India's government made 500 rupees tilde $7.50 and 1,000 rupees tilde $15 banknotes illegal. They can now only be converted to 100 rupees tilde $1.50 or lower denomination notes at bank branches or post offices. Banks were closed the first day after the decision. What follows is the crux of what has happened over the subsequent 4 days. Today, India is on the verge of a major social-political crisis, unless either the government backs off from the decision of banning the currency or some real magic happens. There is chaos in the streets and daily life is slowly but surely coming to a full halt. What Modi did was not only heavy-handed, hugely arrogant, and of no value. It has been implemented very badly to boot, as everything in India always is, and carries the real potential of escalating and snowballing into something horrific. They could have seen that this was not going to end well by simply using primary school math. India today is like a cult under the influence of Narendra Modi, in which, unlike in the past, not the poorest or uneducated citizens, but mostly members of the so-called educated middle class participate on. Over the last 2 decades, people so study exposed to mass education, TV and nationalistic propaganda being taught without an iota of critical thinking skills. In a society in which the concept of reason does not exist, this has made these people receptive to any kind of propaganda with a nationalistic bent or Hindutva. Hindutva equals fanatical Hinduism, which is rapidly metastasizing. To aggrandize his position, Modi ordered a lot of military hardware that India cannot afford, escalated tensions with Pakistan, and what was very conducted likely to fake surgical strike inside Pakistan. This united Indians under the flag Now, the demonetization of the 500 rupees and 1000 rupees banknotes was tagged with nationalism, anti-corruption, and anti-terrorism. Simple-minded, slogan-susceptible persons were hardwired to accept an erroneous causality. Those who did not go along were made to be afraid of being called pro-terrorist elements. Those in the middle class have taken what they deem to be the higher moral ground, for they have mostly avoided suffering from the demonetization. Lacking moral instincts, which is unfortunately the case with much of Indian society. Given its deep-rooted irrationality and superstitions, they cannot see or feel the pain of those who are suffering, even if that suffering stares into their faces. But events are in motion likely that will very soon lead to these salaried members of the middle class starting to feel the pain as well. Their instinctive trust in Modi is likely within weeks of coming crashing down, not because of reasoned argument, but because they will be facing similar problems as the ones the common man is now facing. I went to my bank convert banknotes into new ones. The largest amount one can have converted is 4,000 rupees, $60, until further notice. There was a huge rush of people at the bank. Arguments were erupting, as people refused to stand in queues and the banks gave no explanation of what needed to be done. Fights were breaking out. Amid the chaos, I finally learned that there were 3 queues I had to go through in a sequence. I had to get a form from one counter, which I had to fill in with my name and address. My ID card details, the serial numbers of all the bills I wanted to exchange, and my cell phone number. At the second counter, I then had to present the completed form along with a photocopy of my ID card. I had to sign on the photocopy, which an official then stamped with my banknotes, the form and the photocopy of my ID card. I then went to the next queue to get my currency converted at a third counter. The whole process took about 2 hours. For most people in the busier parts of the cities, it took much longer. Anyone who thinks that a country which wastes 2 hours of every citizen's life to convert his own $60 can ever hope to be an economic power is drinking too much Kool-Aid and cannot do primary level math. Forget any possibility of unaccounted for money removing or reducing corruption. What Modi is doing is a recipe for the destruction of whatever legitimate economy there is. That same afternoon, I went to the post office with a friend who wanted to get converted his money. After waiting a long time there, we found out that the post office had run out of cash. Since then, most ATMs have had limited amounts of cash available and banks keep running out of cash as well. The queues have continued to grow. People start lining up late into the night waiting for banks to open and still have to go back home with no cash. What started with 2 hours of queuing is becoming an endless slog now. Half of India's citizens do not have a bank account and around 25% do not even have an ID card. These are the country's poorest people, who have no way of converting their money, even if they learn how to do it, which is already an insurmountable hurdle. Also, those who are old, disabled or sick have no choice but to suffer. For without personally visiting a bank branch office, one cannot convert one's banknotes. 97% of the Indian economy is cash-based, with 88% of all outstanding currency no longer usable. The economy is coming to a standstill. The daily wage laborer, who leads a hand-to-mouth existence in a country with per capita GDP of a mere $1.600, has no longer work, as his employer has no cash to pay his wages. His life is in utter chaos. He is not as smart as Modi. Despite the repute, Modi has no real-life experience except as a bully and perhaps in his early days as a tea seller at a train station. He has no clue where his life is headed from here. These people are going hungry, and some have begun to raid food shops. People are dying for lack of treatment at hospitals. Old people are dying in the endless queues. Some are killing themselves, as they are unable to comprehend the situation and simply do not know what to do. There are now hundreds of such stories in the media. Small businesses are in shambles, and many will probably never recover. The Hindu wedding season has just started and people are left with unusable banknotes. Their personal and family lives are now in utter disaster. Lacking moral and rational anchors and compassion, hence, members of the salaried middle class are unperturbed. Their salaries get taxed and most of the bribes they are getting end up in gold or property investment. In their minds, poor people and small businesses do not matter. Hypocritical in the cultures of India, as long as the middle class is not suffering, for the time being, they prefer to take what they believe to be the higher moral ground. Let us do a few simple numbers. What has been made illegal comprises 88% of the monetary value of all currency notes in circulation. In an economy based primarily on cash, the liquidity of cash is the lifeline of the economy. This requires that 88% of the new currency be rapidly dispersed into the market. The Indian government has absolutely no history of being incendio entertain a project of this type or magnitude ever, and after the British left, India's institutions have continued to deteriorate. So hope is not an option. If they fail to issue enough new bills, the very limited supply of 100 rupees notes will disappear within a few days. As any rational person has a tendency to store good money while using bad money in transactions. People will hide all newly released currency as well as 100 rupees banknotes until full liquidity is restored. The rich and the well-connected already have done what was needed. A reminder of Gresham's law for Modi. Bad money drives out good money. Those who have no need to convert their money as all their cash is already in the banking system, as is the case with the salaried middle class, which they think is making them look like a heroes in the eyes of Modi and is giving them a sense of moral superiority. They are nothing but turkeys being groomed. Banks are giving out a mere 20,000 rupees, $300 a week at best. Their lives will suffer and for all intents and purposes, their accounts are frozen. This is 10 times over Cyprus. They just have not realized it yet. Whichever way one looks at the above numbers, India's economy is going to start suffocating within weeks, if not within days. And a serious political and social crisis will take place, which will eventually acquire a life of its own. That is as of yet unperturbed when the salaried middle class wakes up with pain. As in any irrational system, it is not reason and morality that will have convinced them to scuttle their hypocrisy and limited vision, but the violence and pain that themselves they will suffer. Politicians and bureaucrats of course cannot be seen queuing at the banks. Many bank branches apparently had their cash secretly replaced by the now illegal bills before the first day of reopening, while no more than 2 bills of 2,000 rupees each should have been collected. Those better connected apparently haven't had a problem with this and have been shown showing off packets of the new currency they have. All this cash will do nothing but end up under mattresses, as it has in the past. As I walk around, corruption is everywhere and has grown exponentially, not only in financial terms but worst of all, in terms of the humiliation and degradation Indians are suffering. And I don't know how a humiliated, soulless person can be anything but corrupt. In village after village people have stopped working, even if they had work, as they can now join the queues at the banks to convert other people's banknotes for a commission. For many young people, this is a wise entrepreneurial decision, as they are making many times the money they would have otherwise made for now. But they are being trained to make money from non-productive activities, not from wealth creation, but from unnecessary problems created by the government. Are they being groomed for a corruption-free society? One has to be naive to respond affirmatively. Fear of the tax authorities means that the level of bribes being offered has gone up. Random people can now impersonate tax officers and collect bribes. People are in the grip of a fear psychosis. Many are emptying their bank deposit boxes, which means that crime will inevitably increase in coming days. People are constantly worrying about what Modi's next knee-jerk act might be and how to protect themselves against it. A police state is knocking at the doors. A receptive environment has been created in which all kinds of rumors are taking wing. Today, salt is selling for 400 rupees, $6 per kilogram. As rumors have been making the rounds that it is about to disappear. This of course creates a situation in which it will actually disappear. The same is happening with sugar. The largely irrational masses are eagerly devouring a great many random rumors. Lesson for Modi: never, ever destabilize a society that works through conventions rather than reason. For it has no way to return to a normal state of affairs without a huge amount of pain and violence. Simply look at neighboring countries in order to understand this. Chronic fear is slowly overtaking the mood of Indians, particularly those who run businesses. They have not only completely lost their trust in the government, but the tax department has been raiding people's premises to scare those who are trying to salvage what they have. They have stopped worrying about creating value. Everyone is talking about what to do with the banned banknotes, for even if they are fully accounted for, people fear that the increasingly rapacious tax authorities will make trouble anyway. People are now converting whatever they can into gold, silver, and mostly for the first time into the US dollar and other foreign currencies as well, all of which are trading at huge premiums. Money is also moving out of the country. Gold has shot up to as much as $2,800 per ounce, if you can find it. Lesson for Modi: the reason people trust Switzerland is because it has hundreds of years of history of protecting private property. Singapore has done an equally good job, but it still lags behind Switzerland. Because trust requires a very, very long history of institutional honesty and integrity. India is back to level 0 for now. When future generations look back, they will see the current demonetization is the worst event in the history of post-colonial India. Finally, the new bills have actually worsened the counterfeiting problem they were supposed to solve. People do not have any experience with what the new banknotes look like. Within a mere 3 days, counterfeits are already in circulation, contrary to the government's claims. The new bills are not any more sophisticated than the old ones and are made of simple paper. And the most productive job Modi ever had was running a tea shop at a railway station, which he then gave up to become a bully. He is a complete stranger to complex thought. He is simplistic in his thinking and does not understand the second-order consequences of his actions. First, he increased Hindu fanaticism. Then he participated in collectivizing people using nationalism. Then he created problems with Kashmir through his heavy-handedness. He completely failed to liberalize the economy or remove corruption from public life, which is an almost impossible job. Quite ironically, Modi is making it possible for public servants to escape scrutiny, the very people who are the fountainhead of all corruption. A simplistic mind is also arrogant. Such a mind, unable to conceive the possibility of unintended consequences, thinks all that has to be done is to issue orders and everything will fall in place. Alas, this may work when shooting innocent people in Kashmir and in other destructive ventures, but when it comes to institutionalizing social progress, a more complex and intelligent approach is needed. All of India's institutions have continued to deteriorate since the British have left. They are rotting away and are in shambles. India had some breathing space over the past 3 decades because of the free gifts of the internet and cheap telephony which it got from the West. This has merely made Indian governments more rapacious and so-called educated Indians more arrogant. They collectively lack the capacity to improve India's institutions after having destroyed them. Demonetization may well be the straw that will break the camel's back by accelerating the deterioration of India's institutions toward the point of breakdown. Perhaps in weeks if not already in coming days. In conclusion, what can one do? As Indian, be a speculator, even if the government does not like it and will blame you for all ills. Try to keep as much of your money in cash in 100 rupees notes. 2,000 rupees notes have no value when you go shopping for groceries. Keep a supply of water and dried food sufficient for a few months' needs. Cash is disappearing, and even before that the economy was stumbling. It might take just one more small domino, more strain on liquidity, to bring about systemic problems in the economy that could bring crucial transactions, businesses, and supply lines to a halt. If systemic violence spreads, everything will be complicated further. Think of Zimbabwe. It pays to be prepared, particularly when we are ruled by zombies.
Now, do you remember earlier when I wrote to you around 10 years ago I could have purchased an ounce of gold for $300? Then I said if I would have told you 10 years ago the gold would hit 1,214 mark, most people would have just laughed at me or called me crazy. Well, let me go back to show you from history what gold has done. And in 1993, when the Lord gave me orders to write the book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth, it took me from 1993 to 1997 to actually complete the book before I made my first copy of that book. So what I'm going to do is bring you back to the end of December 1997, because at that time, the gold was priced at $287.5 per ounce. So obviously back then, when I warned people about the prices of gold and the silver going up in the future, obviously they would have thought that I was nuts based on the price of December 31st, 1997. But over the course, many things have happened. Well, first of all, we've gotten a lot closer to the Lord Jesus Christ. We've seen the birth pangs get much more intense than we have since 1997. So it only stands to reason that as we move closer and closer to the return of the Lord and the beginning of the tribulation, we would see the rise of both the prices of gold and the silver, which no doubt we have, to the point now where in India the price of gold is $2,800, just $200 away from my warning that you could see the prices of gold go to $3,000 to $5,000. Now, as I look back at 1997, I want to give you another projection like I did back in 1997, because we're almost at the point now of that 3,000 announced mark. You can look in the future and know that when the economy falls, not just the United States, but worldwide economy, because that's how the Antichrist is going to take control, that you would see the prices of gold and the silver again shoot through the roof to the levels of $3,000 to $5,000 an ounce. Now, when the people go out and buy all their gold and they buy all their silver and they put these precious metals before Jesus Christ, what happens is obviously the world material superseded Jesus Christ. And anybody who does this, obviously, it doesn't walk and abide in Jesus Christ. And if you're not abiding in Jesus Christ, more than likely, you don't have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And anybody who trusts in this gold, in this silver, during the tribulation, you will find, as I said earlier, the hard way, that the items that you thought were so precious instead of Jesus will be taken away, and you will be wailing and weeping because you lost what you thought was precious. Now, every time I give a video like this, I just tell the people, look it, you can go out and you buy your gold and the silver because it's going to help you in a short term. And what I mean by that is, I truly believe that the smart people will, in their portfolio, have gold and silver, and use this gold and the silver to help sustain you, help sustain other people that are in need. Because we know as Christians, we could use this wisdom that God has given to us for a short period of time. And what I mean by that is, we understand as Christians, we're not buying this gold and this silver because we're taking the place of Christ, but we're using this knowledge to prepare for what's happening at a limited time. In other words, we know that what's going to happen is the outcome of the gold and the silver, it will be taken away. But until the Lord takes it away, at least under the wisdom of the Lord Jesus Christ, we'd be able to use the gold and the silver to help us through the hard times until the Lord takes his church away. So there's great wisdom in understanding the future of gold and silver. Don't let it ever replace the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Don't let anything come before the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Now, concerning the mark of the beast and the Antichrist, as Spock would say, it is not logical for all the world leaders to give up their sovereignty to one man to run the world economy unless something major or catastrophic would take place that would force them to hand over power to one man. And essentially, this is what we know from the book of Revelation, that the Antichrist will somehow, through some crisis, be able to take control of the world's economy to the point that during the tribulation period, exactly 1,260 days after he confirms a covenant with many for 7 years, in other words, exactly 3.5 years, he's going to break his covenant that he confirms and tell everybody that he's got in force at that time the mark of the beast, which, as the scripture shows, will be placed in your right hand or your forehead. Now, there's a whole new way of currency that is coming, and it's been coming slowly but surely, and you'll see the progression of that in my book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth. But the final process of the world economy will be embedded in your hand. It won't be physical paper, it will be digital. And so stories like we're seeing here in India is just showing you the prelude of things that are coming that will help give over the world economy to one man who's called the Antichrist. I don't care how good the economy looks, how many people tell you how great the economy is going to be. That's not what we see as the end result in the book of Revelation. We know that there's going to be a collapse so bad that the whole world, the world leaders are going to hand over the economy to this Antichrist. And just as Jesus warned, you will not be able to buy or sell unless you take the Antichrist mark. I can't stress enough that the news that you're seeing in India is just a microcosm of what is coming in the future. There's no way around it. You cannot escape it. You can't put your head in the sand and say, well, I'm just going to hide from it. You won't be able to hide from it. Just the way the people in India cannot hide from what's going on in India today. When the Lord spoke to me in 1993, I had no idea that I was even going to open up a YouTube channel. I didn't even know what YouTube channel was back then. Let alone now, for my ministry, I have, I believe, a little over 15,000 subscribers to my YouTube channel alone. And people are beginning to understand the signs of the last days. And people are beginning to prepare themselves spiritually and economically for what's coming. Now, just like God showed Joseph the 7 years of prosperity and then 7 years of famine. In that story, the Lord shows us that we need his wisdom to be prepared for the future. And just as Joseph warned his people, get ready and store up as much as you can for 7 years, because 7 years of famine's coming and you're going to need as much as you can get. So I'm asking you, prepare for the future. And whatever it takes, put aside something for the future. And you're going to have to weigh out what it is that you're going to put aside for the future. Will it be paper? Will it be gold and silver? That's up to you. All I know is what Christ shows us concerning gold and silver in the last days. Use his wisdom to help you through the time that's coming. This is Frank DeMore with the End Times Research Ministry. God bless.